Dan Lanning in these big games continues to make head-scratching decisions. However, last night he got away with it because they were able to beat Ohio State by 1. And Paul, this really the first test of a year where Ryan Day's got the roster to win a national championship, and they come up short on the road by 1.
Listen, let's start with Ohio State's very good.
Yeah.
Except the problem that we talked about before the season looks like it could still be a problem, and that's at the quarterback position. Good decisions, bad decisions, and I mean, I really like that team. I realize the circumstances and the atmosphere, and you can alibi it and saying that's really not bad. But I expected Ohio State to win, and that was probably predicated more on what I've seen from Oregon this year. But
Yeah.
for all the inexplicable decisions that Dan Lanning makes, he still won a big game. And Matt, I'm struggling to remember the last time Ryan Day won a big game.
Yeah, I don't. Maybe that game's different if it's in Columbus. I still am very bullish on the Buckeyes. There's just too much talent not to be. I do find it alarming, though, how many times an Oregon receiver was left wide open for a big play. So defensively, look, and we said this at the beginning of the season with realignment. Ohio State was just playing a Big Ten version of themselves yesterday. Who
Yeah.
else in the Big Ten does Ohio State historically play that's like that? It's not Penn State. It's never been Michigan, even under Jim Harbaugh. They're not wide open. So Ohio State just looked in the mirror yesterday against Oregon and were like, oh, that's what it's like to play us. And they didn't have the defense to stop it.
No, and you mentioned Penn State. I think if I had any takeaway from yesterday, that was maybe the most significant win because we all know. I mean, hey CBS, we've seen the graphic about how far it takes to lose a Big Ten game. Thank you for sharing that with us. But the point being, uh, I mean, Penn State did something they don't normally do, win a big game, and instead of everybody pointing the finger at James Franklin. Lincoln Riley, here we are once again. We're sitting here in mid-October, and you've got 3 losses. You're out of the playoffs, and your tenure is looking as shaky as it was back when I was making idiotic statements, or I thought, before the season.
Yeah. And I mean, on the other side of that, Paul, I thought we had grown as a show and as a unit, but Lincoln Riley's 4-8 in his last 12.
I mean, I
I
know you
mean,
gave me a hard time on SportsCenter the other day for that one more shot at Lincoln Riley, but I tried to prop the guy up after LSU, Matt, but I think you can tell where I'm going on him.
yeah, he's 4-8 in his last 12. And now it all comes down to where he finishes this season in terms of what USC's prospects are, because they're out of the playoff. First year in the Big Ten, they're out of the playoff. They got a random game at Maryland. So you'll see the graphic again of how much they travel, but we could have solved
Wow.
this in realignment and not done it. Rutgers, Washington, Nebraska, UCLA, Notre Dame. I mean,
Not a
is it
lot.
I mean, look, hey, if we get here to the midway point of the season, I have two that we're not talking about enough, but midway point of the season, halftime. Are there any teams that we're not talking about right now that we should?
Well, I mean, I know the wonks are talking what about BYU? They're talking about Indiana. I mean, I'm probably not as focused on them as others. I mean, I'm more amazed at the schools that are playing themselves out than the ones who are playing themselves in.
I would say there are two teams we should keep an eye on as we move forward. BYU, you mentioned them, but I think in that same vein, it's Iowa State in the Big 12. They're undefeated 6-0 for the second time in school history. It's not sexy. It's Iowa State. It's Ames. It's Matt Campbell, but they keep winning games. And don't look now, but Notre Dame is
Yeah.
now back into the conversation,
Yeah.
even after their loss against NIU, that they're going to have some games down the stretch, Paul. And the other one, because of week one, it's funny how teams disappear off the map after a week one loss. We saw it with LSU after USC. We also saw it with Clemson against Georgia. Paul, right now, Clemson and Miami in the ACC. Miami had the off week, but Dabo Sweeney just quietly hanging out there with a bunch of group guys that he knows because he's anti-portal.
No, I agree. And I was watching that massive win over Wake Forest yesterday, thinking the same thing. And by the way, not to take away from Dabo Sweeney's greatness, but Texas A&M is also a school that is just sitting there, getting no attention. with only a loss now to Notre Dame.
Yeah, and they've got the schedule to kind of do something about it. They were also off last week. Connor Wegman got the start a week before. Mike Elko, year one, just kind of like, hey, just give me some talent. I'll play some hard-nosed football. So let's wrap up the Matt Berry Show presented by Allstate with this. I'm going to put you on the spot. I apologize, but it's what we do. Midway point superlatives. Question one. At the halfway point of the season, in your estimation, who is the best team in the country?
I believe the best team is still Texas. I think they've proven it by the win at Michigan, which not as impressive, but still the big house is the big house. I think they've beaten everyone pretty convincingly. They've had one or two slightly off games, but doing what they did to Oklahoma, and with everything that everybody has said ad nauseum, to me was very, very impressive.
I agree. Sark has that thing at a high clip right now and has something to say about it, especially with Georgia coming next week. Question number two. Who has been the biggest disappointment through the midway point of the season?
Well, I'm moving Florida State. I don't even think that qualifies as an answer anymore, does it?
No, that's been proven.
I mean, but I am going to surprisingly go Alabama. And I say that because they have the biggest win of the year in college football, but it proved somewhat fraudulent to me because of what I thought they would be and what I think they're going to end up being.
Question number three, biggest surprise at the midway point season.
Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they're 4-2.
Yeah, and don't look now. They have Texas at home in a couple of weeks. If they negotiate Florida this weekend, and I've given up trying to figure out Billy Napier, they'll host Texas, assuming Texas goes according to chalk. I mean, that's going to be one of the bigger Vanderbilt games in modern time.
They're 2-1 in league, 4-2 overall. And finally, which team, or rather, which coach has out of nowhere put themselves in a very warmish type seat at the midway point of the season?
Well, there is an endless list of those, but to me, it's probably DeBoer. And I don't mean costing himself a job.
Fair.
I'm just saying, if you're looking at Kalen DeBoer as a stock price, before the season, I mean, it's like sky high.
Yeah.
It shoots. Literally, they had to stop trading on Kalen DeBoer to go Wall Street on you at midnight 2 weeks ago. And now, I mean, there are people it's like on the penny stocks market. I mean, he literally is turning Alabama fans off. I mean, and
is it that bad?
I think it is.
Like, I mean, are you hearing that much from Alabama fans?
Yes.
Like, really?
I mean, Matt, I mean, I realize, they can turn it around and go 11-1 and still win, but I just, there's something about it. And I think it's, I thought there was a bottom for him. And Alabama, it just shot. I mean, at that moment yesterday when that game looked to be going into overtime, and the bottom just got broken. I'm sure I'll be accused of piling on. I mean, the shots at his clothes, I mean, there's no filter around him. I read a local columnist yesterday who said beating South Carolina was actually worse than the Vanderbilt loss.
Oh, that's why we love it. A win's worse than a loss.
I mean, it doesn't make sense, but I mean, I'm not gonna. I mean, I could pick you an obscure coach that nobody cares about, like Mike Loxley, who everybody thought was in great shape that's having a bad season. But that's a waste of our time. Kalen DeBoer came into the season, one of the top 5 coaches in the country?
Yep. Yeah. And at the midway point, we got to see a turnaround from Alabama, because this, like, you're right. Like, they went from sky high to like, what the hell are we doing now? So midway point of the season, I love it. A couple of surprises out there. I do want to give them their due. Pittsburgh undefeated, 6-0 for the first time since 1982. What a story they've got going there. The service academies, Army and Navy, are both undefeated. A couple of feel-good stories there. The Big 12 is wide open. The ACC is starting to shape itself out. The SEC is kind of a little bit of a mess. I don't think anyone knows who plays in the Big 10 still. So look, midway point. We've been here with you from the beginning. We'll be with you till the end. But if the first half of the season is any indication of what's coming in the second half, buckle up because it is going to be a fun ride the rest of the way. For Paul Finebaum, I'm Matt Berry. Appreciate you watching the Matt Berry Show on the College Football YouTube channel presented by